All right. Hello, Mike. Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday, Jack. Um, Delighted to talk about a subject that you wanted to share with me, and I want to go right into it, but just to get started, I um, am teaching in the Masters of Information Strategy and Design at Northwestern.
Mm,
So I've been teaching there
mm,
for 11, 12 years anyway, for a while. And I'm developing a new course, and to do so, I asked for all the syllabi. And remember back in the good old days, that was my claim to fame, is that I was asked by the dean, like, get all the syllabi and publish them all online. This was our big push, right? And the first thing
mm.
I'm like, I think he expected me to type in all the syllabi handed to me by professors such as yourself, like, here you go.
Mm.
And I'm like, well, I'm not doing that. So I built the intranet and built the way that they could submit their own syllabi. And actually a pretty decent, I thought actually a fairly decent data model for syllabi, rather than a big
Yeah,
text
yeah,
box.
I remember. Yeah, I
Yeah,
remember. It
we had it
was, it
week by
was,
week. I could have done
yeah.
some fun stuff with that one too, but
Mm,
yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I get all these syllabi, and the last thing, of course, I want to do is read them. Just ugh. So, but I
mm,
put them into a rag, put them into what am I using? Notebook LM,
mm,
and I wondered in learning objectives for this degree, what are the most common verbs that people use?
mm.
So I don't think these are surprising, but I think they say something. So I'm curious. Can you think? I think a dozen syllabi? Yeah, whatever.
Mm.
Not that many, but like a dozen. So learning
Oh,
objectives. What do you think? Number one, or two or
well,
three, doesn't matter.
learning objective. I don't know. I mean, something
Well, after
related.
taking this class, you should be able to blank something, right? Like what verb can you do? Basically, the word do is not, well, maybe. We'll see. Go ahead. Just come up
So,
with
so,
any.
so this is your degree program, right? So it's related
Yes,
to
yes.
information strategy, right?
Hmm.
I don't know. So there needs to be something maybe related to design, right? So I would say that design should be in top three.
Fantastic. That is actually number 10, used 14 times.
Oh, okay. Oh,
I
all right.
know. Rough already, isn't it?
All right. Well, I guess so. Let's go a little bit more general. So maybe you should be able to discuss something, right?
I'm gonna give that to you. Actually, that would be number three is describe. 31
Okay.
times.
All
You
right.
you can
Okay.
describe something, okay?
Okay. All right.
As we all know, so
Uh-huh.
important in life. It's about this big, about,
Uh-huh.
weight about 10 pounds. So there you can describe something.
Okay. Well, describing. Okay. So maybe something. I don't know. Maybe something related to putting on paper, like maybe summarizing something.
Well, not to belabor this. Well,
Mhm.
it, create is used 16 times, a powerful
Okay.
and good concept, right? But that's still number one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine. So create and design are
Okay.
9 and 10.
Okay.
Number one is actually to explain something.
Okay.
Is it?
Uh, well,
I keep thinking of maybe that's my own problem is I spend way too much time explaining things.
hmm,
But do people need things? Well, explain, identify is number two.
mhm.
Describe is number three. Are those actually synonyms? Probably, right? To identify and describe. Yeah. Explain, identify, describe all seem really similar skills to me.
Yeah. I mean, this is
Talk
this is
about.
really this is really contextual. So and stylistic. Yeah. To me, the word design is a big would be a big word, right? But to some other people, maybe I don't know, discussing, right? It's kind of, yeah, maybe related. So yeah, I mean, if you open now, kind of like synonyms, like there used to be this system called WordNet, where it's
Hmm.
kind of contains synonyms, antonyms, like hyponyms, and all those relationship between words that are hierarchical and kind of similarity based. Yes, that would be kind of an interesting study. But yeah, I guess it kind of depends on the people quite a bit, right? Who wrote the syllabi.
Well, and also again an imperfect thing because teaching often isn't the ephemeral part I think is time, right? The time someone takes with something. And you, if anything, are just there to help structure and maybe give some um, frame to the time spent in the topic, and we can all say that's pretty valuable. I think it's more valuable than we let on. It all often doesn't matter too much the topic intends it's really the time that you spend in it, right? That is precious. I just was surprised that in this that talking about something was more important than applying, using, or demonstrating. Not necessarily too much higher, but kind of more higher, because I always think to do or to act is where you learn, right? You learn through doing something. Whereas I could say maybe the number one word should be think about, it's very valuable, but it doesn't have much tangible outcomes, right?
Yeah.
But I think actually it does. It's actually a really important thing to spend as
Yeah.
much time as you can thinking about things, right?
Yeah, there's a precursor to a lot of things. If you are not thinking about the subject matter, then that's really not your subject matter. And yeah, I mean, should you be studying something that you are not going to be thinking about later on? That is a big if, right? Like, what we are hearing about the student loan crisis, right? Like, we are starting the repayment processes, and now people are waking up to the fact that they have a tremendous burden of those loans in areas that they're studied, and that's not actually anything that they are doing, not anything that there is prospects for high-paying jobs in those areas. And it's kind of like a double whammy, or triple whammy, right?
Oh, I can't even. Well, yeah. Again, not to derail because we have a great topic, but my favorite phrase lately, I don't know if I pulled this on you, is a charismatic grifter.
Oh, this is a new one. That's a good one.
and what makes it a fun phrase is how incredibly common it is. Also as a life goal for many, right? Because when you think of grift, I always think, well, the point of grift is the only outcome is money. Does that make sense? Right? Like it doesn't really matter what you do. Your only goal for doing it is money. And perhaps to be critical of the education system, that they were kind of sold this like, well, you're not doing what you were studying, I think is well, you're just getting into grift now, right? Like if I could just train you how to do something, no, I'm supposed to train you in ancient Greek philosophy, right? It isn't something for money. It's something to think about. See what I mean? Like you're just supposed to be able to have time to think about things you wouldn't normally think about, and then you use that thinking time to build yourself in whatever society you live in something fruitful for you, hopefully, right? But if I give you a student loan so that you can study sports medicine, sorry, sports medicine people, but I always consider that to be like, well, why can't you just go do sports medicine, right? Like having training in it is certainly helpful, but I'm assuming that you're going to learn quite a bit by just being around it and so on and so forth, right? Like it's kind of like being a doctor. Like there's some amount that you are supposed to just know, but most of it is through sheer experience, right? You're supposed to work 2 to 3 years nonstop you know what I mean, in it before you can be considered to be somebody who knows it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely. I mean, there's some legal ramifications in some jobs,
Sure.
right?
I'm
might be
oversimplifying, of course.
right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I had a colleague in high school, and he he studied philosophy. He had like a master's degree in philosophy, and that's, I mean, that's very, I don't know, maybe it's not grifting, but definitely kind of like high flying, highly kind of respected field, I guess, right? But
well, they call it a doctor of philosophy. Come on, like that's the
yeah,
point, is you're supposed to know how to think about it. That's the
yeah,
philosophy part is different from, well, like my dad's a psychologist. He's a doctor, he has his
yeah,
PhD, doctor in philosophy, right? So
yeah.
you can't learn how people function, but you can learn how to think about how people function, and then you go on from there. Or economists are all doctorates, right? I mean, it's all about philosophy, I
Well,
think.
yeah, but
Yeah.
there's some areas where the business model for the life, after the degree is easier, uh, a lot easier, or maybe a lot more applied than something like life after being a philosophy doctor of philosophy, right? Um, I mean, how are you supposed to pay back the student loans? I mean, you can teach probably, for which that's a very small sliver of opportunities. Maybe you can write a book that it's going
Yeah.
to be very
Oh, yeah.
small amount of people interested in it. So
The
yeah, so
answer to
the things
this
are
is
very difficult.
obvious.
Things are
The
very
answer is
difficult
obvious, is
in
pay
some
as little
areas.
as possible for your education. That's the
Yeah,
that's the problem. Right?
yeah,
Don't
yeah.
go
So
into debt.
yeah, so coming by, coming back to the syllabi, right? I mean, yeah, you could use the same verbs, maybe, for sociology and philosophy,
Mhm.
discussing, being able to, present an idea or summarize something. But that's kind of like very, it's kind of not really explaining a lot, in terms of, hey, so what is actually the core value there, right?
I'm stumped only because I'm trying to build this sort of strategy of AI curriculum,
Mm.
and I don't want to start it with explaining it. Right? I mean, doesn't it give you some pause of like, what would you be able to do with a strategy of AI after you take my class, Jack, which I'm
Mm.
expecting you to do?
All
No,
right,
I'm
okay, cool. Yeah, I'm gonna start looking for textbooks.
oh, actually, I wouldn't mind some help with that one.
Mm.
But you see what I mean? It's not, can you talk about AI? I guess that's all we ever do. But I actually
Mm.
do apply things to AI. And I was just in a conference with a student who's struggling because she wants to build an AI tool, and she's doing her thesis, her end project or whatever that's called, capstone.
Mm.
And I'm her advisor, and I kept thinking of like how to help her articulate like what would AI do? Like is it something where it would teach you something? Is it something where it would augment? Is it something where it becomes interesting what word we use? And to me, I always think of it as just a spring springboard, right? It's like a partner to help me think. Because I can
Yeah,
only think
yeah.
so much, and then I usually come up with something, and then I dump it over to AI, and then I can kind of like relax a little bit and wait for
Mm.
it to come back and say how great I am, and kind of riff on it, and then I can look at that and say, well, not quite like that. You know what I mean? And
Mm.
it sort of keeps me into our flowing that we talk about, right? Like you can keep engaged. It keeps me engaged, but it doesn't exhaust me.
I think we are very dangerously entering the area of doctorate in education, where where people are actually studying those outcomes and what are supposed to be the result, or how to construct the curriculum. And that's kind of like a little bit like a snake eating its own tail. Um, because you can start optimizing those kind of meta learning things, and I don't know if you can really optimize something that from the get-go is maybe deficient in something fundamental. I don't know. Yeah, it's in technical, in STEM areas, right? Like, let's say if we want to talk about AI or discussing AI, it's always helpful to have some aspects of programming. Like you've been writing, some code, right? And you're beginning to see that in your environment, right? There are certain things that work, certain things that don't. And then you can kind of generalize this to maybe kind of like other problems and have a little bit maybe more applied discussion, right? So I don't know.
No, I honestly, don't you think it's amazing? We just fell right into the thing you shared. Here is a kind of very grumpy professor, and it's weird to look at somebody's slides without them saying what they mean, but you sent these slides and it had to do with and I don't know if you want to share the visual, but it's called the algorithmification of society, a wake-up call. Dr. Dagmar Monette, doctor in computer science. That's still a PhD, right? Still PhD in computer science.
I guess.
There you go. You have one, I don't. What you have a piece of paper. It says a doctorate in philosophy and computer science, right, or something. Isn't that what it says on it? Okay, there you go. Okay, cool. Yeah. So you shared it. Do you want to share kind of what was interesting? Because
I don't have it open on my computer, but
I have
generally
it here, but it's very busy.
Yeah, it is very busy, but the kind of the concept there is, I think, something that we've been
share a
kind of
little bit of it.
dancing around, for a little bit, which is that if you have an individual, right, that individual is kind of doing something, maybe at work, right, like kind of solving a problem, right, trying to answer an email or something like that, right, is that something that can be modeled, right, and if that's possible, how that model or an algorithm that kind of runs the model is supposed to be like, right? Like, so we've been trying to address that, and and I've been always kind of maybe disagreeing with you in the kind of the capabilities of models or algorithms. Like, your point of view was always that, hey, if you throw into the mix the emotional aspect, and the kind of like human interaction and affective reasoning and all that stuff, then things are getting harder. And I was always of the opinion that that yes, they are hard, but they can be modeled. And Eliza, was kind of the first thing, right? Like, it was kind of able to really create like a interesting reflection model of human questions, only through very simple regular expressions that were kind of reversing the sentences that the human being was typing in the keyboard, and then that was creating, hey, really kind of it was like a Turing test, right? Passing the Turing test. People actually thought that they were communicating with a real person. And maybe it was just because that at that time, very few people knew about the Turing test and knew about AI and knew about the limitations at that time, right?
Computers were pretty young too. Let's put it that way, right?
So probably that was a default, right? That people thought, hey, there is a human being at the other end of the wire, because I mean, who else, right? I mean, computers actually, So that was the default. So, but still, I think that after we've been progressing through many decades, still I think that it was easy to actually model somebody else's emotions and respond appropriately, because it's kind of like just a number of default states that and simple logical assignment was kind of like a very good tool to maybe not to kind of go to the bottom of everything, but really kind of fool people into kind of believing that they have a system that is kind of understanding your emotions.
Nothing. I only laughed because only you and I, well, I find state management to be such a funny way to think of what is actually, these are all waves, right? Nothing is a state, right? These are just things you can pretend because you're such an engineer. Sorry, Jack. You know, it's like, yeah, you can always just put it into a black and white drawing on a, you know, it can always be two-dimensional when it's actually four-dimensional. See what I mean? Because this is our brilliance as humans, that we can break down problems into solvable bits. And so anyway, I think it's funny because there's nothing I love more than thinking about state management. But just for a second, if you don't mind, because you are the learned one and I am the novice, that when we talk about an algorithm, I was actually introduced to one the other day. And the algorithm is that, and if you are adding two columns of numbers, you take the first number and add it to the second number, or the number from the bottom to the top, and then you sum them. And if you have leftover integers, you move it to the next line, where then you add the second two, and then so on and so forth until you have a answer. And that algorithm is the moving it to one to the other. That's the algorithm. So I thought that was funny because I'm like, oh, we always say algorithms are clever. And it's like, well, that's not, oh, it is clever because it works, because it produces the right result, right? The algorithm is an easier way than whatever the alternative is. And the reason, of course, I got into this because of that stupid quantum computing thing, right? Because it's the idea that you can just, well, actually, it's not even quantum computing. There is a probably it's more vector computing, that you can add all of them together and you never ever have to carry it over. Like there's a different algorithm that they were talking about, and that's kind of what makes massive multiplication possible, is you don't have to know what the first number is. You probably know this better than me, but either way, it was kind of fascinating because I was like, oh yeah, algorithms, it's what makes my Facebook feed look funny. And I'm like, well, it's nothing more than probably adding something, adding one number to another number. But correct me if I'm wrong. I mean,
the whole, like artificial intelligence was divided a long time ago into two camps. One was logical AI, lie, so-called lie, and then connectionist. So you could make an argument that the logical AI was a little bit more kind of involved in the algorithms, where you know, you kind of have the predicate calculus, and you can do really kind of like in the realm of logic, you can do really complex kind of, you know, inferences, and expert systems were kind of based on that. So you have multiple if-then statements, preconditions, post-conditions.
State management.
Yeah, but still, it was not an obvious collection of states. You could have something intermediate in the intermediate realm, where it was really kind of like more like a human life. Like you have rules of life, you know, and you have rules of physics and rules of chemistry, and you can write, you know, long statements. Now, connectionist AI, large language models, or the whole Google is just multiplying one vector by another vector. And yes, they are great vectors, but you know, what's the difference for the computer whether you multiply 3 numbers together or 1 billion numbers together? To an algorithm, that doesn't really matter at all. Right. So the whole Google works because you can represent words as vectors, and you calculate cosine between those two vectors, and you know that, you know, they are similar. You know,
remember, it's not even words though. I love it. It's
Yeah.
actually just a combination of syllables.
Exactly.
I was doing Wordle. Do you ever play Wordle?
No, I don't. But
okay, but you've heard of it, right?
To me. Yeah.
Okay, but either way, the same brain function in Wordle is that you look for combinations of things, and that's how you solve things. You don't need a word. You just need, anyway. There's certain kind of patterns.
Yeah, so I guess so. That's you know, so it's besides the point, right? Algorithms are there, right? Maybe it's something, you know, like a chess algorithm, like you know, it's really kind of complex things, or a Go algorithm. Well, it's really something complex, but you know, it can be decomposed. Any algorithm can be decomposed unless I'm, maybe there is a proof somewhere in the theory of computation that maybe some algorithms cannot be decomposed. But let's say we are talking about kind of like moving numbers around in a kind of certain way. Any of those things can be decomposed into a discrete states.
Yeah, Fourier.
Right?
Come
And
on, Fourier is my best
yeah,
friend. I mean, that's all there
small,
is, right?
simple things. And I think you can make an argument that if you don't have that in your syllabus, that decomposition of a problem skill, then you're going to be screwed, if you are solving even the simplest things, because at the end of the day, there is always the steps, and you have to see the steps in your head or put them on paper or in a Visio or a Lucid chart, so that you can solve the problem. So yeah, I think, yeah. Maybe there's some areas, like for example, fuzzy logic, right? Where the state is not exactly, the peak of the wave, right? It's
Right.
it's not just bar charts, right? It could be like a wave, right? And hey, you are under the graph, and it's fuzzy logic will say, hey, maybe the probability of you being correct or you being incorrect, is kind of that shape, and maybe it's a triangle, or maybe it's a trapezoid, or maybe it's a kind of like some sort of a wave, and you are there. So that means that it's 70% yes, but 30% you are not there, right?
Right.
Like
Well, that's all I mean about the states, right? Is that you can trigger the state for being upset, but what it really means is you're going to be in a curve, right? Like everything is going to have some sort of repercussions, and this is it's not the butterfly effect, but it's our confident, right, that everything does affect everything else. That's the point. Is there's no I went on a tangent with GPT the other day about nulls, right? Because nulls in mathematics are useful, but they don't exist. There is no such thing as a null in real life. And it's just sort of a funny thing that you've already kind of cheated a little bit, right? Not grifting cheating, but more like, we'll just invent this convenient thing so that now we can have this other realm of negative things, or we could have particles and antiparticles. You see what you sort of make up a world that helps you understand something, which is perfectly reasonable, right? I'm making up stories to help understand AI, right? I'm going to tell a story and have students do things so that they can have an outcome where they can explain they can explain something. No, I don't want explaining to be any of the outcomes, right? It's like that's what's fun, is that you have to come up with you have to go through some pains to come up with something that's going to have harmony and help in the long run, right? Or like with quantum computing, you can just be grift, right? That's the thing. You can always grift, right? To convince somebody that there's something amazing that could happen. And your professor, and I just don't want to say, I showed that one thing about unregulated bad use of AI, distortion. There's a lot of stuff here about how training isn't nice. We all agree that probably all the bias training was not at all nice to try to get a decent data set on how nasty we can be as humans, is probably something that AI had to be trained on. And when you kind of I guess he's positing somehow that the things we teach ML, I mean, is this ML, right? The things we teach ML can be wrong. I guess what I'm saying is like, I think kind of the point of AI isn't to be correct. I think it's to be less brittle than some of our other things. You talked about regular expressions, another fabulous. I mean, boy, I loved regular expressions, right? And that somebody was so excited about regular expressions, which are just a bunch of engineering math gobbledygook, right? At the bottom of it, I have no idea how you write the thing that lets you use them, but using them is tons of fun, right? And somebody was probably clever enough to say, hey, we could make this thing act like a psychologist.
Yeah,
right? With just being able to parse out a verb or a noun or something like that through regular expressions, or just like, hey, let's take this and you can um, make the first letter capitalized or whatever I learned to
exactly.
do,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's just like a fun tool, but the tool doesn't dictate what you do with it, right? It's just a tool that's fun. And I still think maybe both of us feel like AI is still just, I think we're just figuring out what to do with it. I don't think anyone knows right now. I think it's just too early.
Well, I think we are very close to this different thing, right? Like right now, AI is kind of like a search engine. Kind of you have to type something and press enter or click on something for the
Yeah.
AI to get started. But I think we are just around the corner with the kind of always on AI,
The
where
agentic stuff, yeah.
yeah, the agentic stuff, and so it's just uh, maybe that's not what we want, right? We don't want the Windows operating system to taking continuous screenshots, even if those continuous screenshots may kind of inform the co-pilot and solve our problem, because the AI will observe, hey, you are doing something this way, and maybe you can do it different way. So yeah, so I think the difference here is that we are still operating in a reactive system environment where you have to press enter for the system for the algorithm to kick in, no matter how complex the algorithm might be, right? It's kind of like we are still in the chess kind of thing. You have to make your move, right, and then you have to wait for the opponent.
Well, on that topic, and I think it's a really good one, and you have two kids who probably you might have observed this. So
Mm.
and we're going to go back to this algorithm thing. A lot of people feel as though um, because algorithms have taken over a lot of the trouble that I used to go through organizing things. That used to be my job of like, where do you put things so someone can find them, right? This is the
Mm.
organization of information. But instead,
Yeah,
we went to an
maybe even
algorithmic.
strategic.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe even
Well, I honestly got to throw my card down, and with the persons is they're always looking up here, and I'm like, no, you always start with data. Just figure out what your data model is. That's all you need to think about right now, because it's
Mm.
all going to be data at some point. So here we are in this world where people give so much data, so much so that you can't organize it, which is the topic of my class. Right? A human
Mm.
can't organize it. You get how many Instagram posts come in every second, right?
Mm.
Millions a second, right? There's no human that can do this, but at the same time, to consume it, what is happening? A lot of people are like, well, kids, they're ADD. They just are, flipping through their phones, or they basically can consume so much in an algorithmic um, model that it gives us concern. So the reason I bring this up is that you and I are using AI where I just said, I think and think and think, and then I type something in and then I hit AI, go think about this for the milliseconds or whatever while I take
Mm.
a break, right? Because my poor little brain isn't wired to be constantly thinking. Thinking takes work and effort,
Mm.
right? So, but it can do a little more thinking, and then I can do some more thinking, and we can go back and forth. And to me, that's a lot of fun, and I do that all day long. Now, I don't think of that as agentic, right? I don't have it always on. I get to have time to think. And that's important to me. And I think what you brought up is interesting as a sidebar, and maybe it's more relevant to our children. Our children, I think differently. I think we might be unhappy with them about this because we don't think that way, right? We think of, oh, what's a good use of your time? Or
Mm.
why aren't you spending more time, doing the things that I used to think were good? Anyway, you know how people are, right? Like their models that are pretty useful for them are no longer useful, right? Things change. And just even us having computers is such a monumental shift in effort and feedback, right? I don't think computers would even exist if they didn't break all the time, right? Because they tell you instantly, I'm broken on line 37 because you put in
Mm.
a comma in wrong. You see what I mean?
Mm.
Like you're
Mm.
instantly told how insufficient your work was. Whereas most people could go by months without hearing that, you're that thing that you did, that building that you designed was going to collapse. I actually saw this thing about an architect who built a building in New York and did not take in engineer, did not take into account a certain kind of wind, right? And they said, well, what he computed, and this was in like the 70s, he figured out that if this wind happened, that this particular design would snap the building. Not only it wouldn't collapse, it would actually fall over and take out half of Manhattan. So the dilemma for him was, should I tell anybody? And honestly, and this is kind of what's even worse, honestly, most of his thought was to go in his car and drive off a cliff so that he wouldn't have to worry about it. Right? Like serious stuff, right? You've designed this thing, it's up, and it is literally dangerous. And it's all due to all these people signing off on things they shouldn't have signed off on. And I'm like, wow, this is like before computers, right? I mean, this is pretty major smart people who took their time and had tons of expertise. And so weirdly enough, he did go and tell them, and in secret, they patched all of the beams in the middle of the night. They patched them all over months, right? To be able to mitigate the problem that would happen if the wind came. And later, rather, because of course he was afraid if he said this, his career was over, which it would have been, right? We're very mean people in this way. We don't allow mistakes like that. Anyway, but he was actually later lauded. He was like, here at least you were an actual honest professional person who realized and corrected a mistake. And I don't know why I bring this up, because I keep thinking of like now, the culpability of computers is kind of puzzling. Did they ruin our children's lives? You know what I mean? Like, have they taken away all their abilities and algorithms as in this, it kind of makes this point of like, are these algorithms going to fool us all into being, I don't even know, right? Like what yeah, there's some good art stuff in here, which I like, because that still makes you think. Art should make you kind of wonder, like, what the heck does this mean? Is it banana or banana? I don't know. That's an interesting idea. But no harm is done. I guess what I'm wondering is if this AI came into your life. Well, for one, it would probably be your best friend. I do feel a little bit of connection to this thread. You know what I mean? And then I have another thread about yogurt dressings or something like that. I have less emotional attachment to its answer about, how to cook falafel than I do, oh, here, you're helping me write this book or helping me build this course. So these words out of my mouth once again have explained nothing.
Yeah, and just imagine the level of your attachment, if there was something like this infamous Microsoft paperclip avatar attached to that AI thread, and kind of making, like three discrete, maybe faces, maybe smiley face, neutral, and sad, right? I mean, you would amplify your attachment by a level of magnitude. So
Tamagotchis, man, it already happened. Yeah. We've already been there.
Yeah, and so we are just scratching the surface of AI. Yeah, so I agree with you. And there's actually a lot of effort now to embed AI into those engineering systems where a building like you are describing, that Manhattan skyscraper. Now a building is going to be a data model. It's called BIM, right? Building information model or whatever, where all the pipes, all the siding, all the roof, the beams, they all exist in a model that you can call by a search engine, or you can bring up as an image, right? Like a CAD image. Right, and then you can kind of run a let's say wind pressure simulation, which was the problem over there. They kind of I think they assumed that the wind is going to be maybe at a certain amount of pressure, but there's 1 or 5% of likelihood that the wind is going to be much stronger and the whole thing will just collapse here, like you said. So now the AI is going to be able to do that. Yeah.
From the engineer, I was saying this is from the emotional point of view. This is from the human point of view still, is that the responsibility, you've already probably heard, I wrote this article, right, is I think our future jobs are going to be the people to blame when AI makes mistakes. So that's what, is that our job then? That we don't have to have the expertise ourselves. We just have these, it told me it was sad. And then I changed my term paper to make it happy. And then, my professor said, you fail. And then I'm like, oh, wait, you see what I mean? As I don't think human agency is quite as simple as you think, unless, again, you don't have faith in our children. This is the other thing. I mean, do you think that they're that easily duped? Oh God, maybe we're back to the grifter thing again.
I don't know. Maybe there are, but the issue is, like what is the syllabus saying? Like what are the requirements? Are we, if we are just about discussing things, then perhaps okay, but it's
right.
So,
it does let you off the hook, right? You only have to be articulate.
maybe it's okay for a philosopher to be able to discuss things, but maybe it's not okay, totally not okay for a civil engineer that designs a building to put discussion as the number one item, right? So it kind of depends, I guess.
Oh, 100%. And again, semantically, it's just fun to talk about. But I visually, this person is sort of giving all these examples of. Well, actually, we can jump to the end because he does have a framework, because I guess that's also about explaining things, is to put it into a one slider, right? So demystify AI. Demystify with factual information the magic thinking about what AI could do but still does not. Would that be a learning objective? Demystify. Maybe, right? I mean, I guess that's just plain old. Is it just adding one and one together? I don't know, right? Ethics, put ethic and moral judgment into focus, prioritize human rights and values.
Yeah.
It's
a little bit like
good luck with that, as one says. Like, I mean, as far as human society, right? Like, we have a really hard time with ethics and rights, like forever. Okay. Reclaim autonomy back and make informed decisions related to technology. I think they did take one of my classes, because it seems like a lot of talking. Reclaim autonomy back and make informed decisions related to technology. Autonomy and agency, I mean, don't we debate this all the time? Like, I don't think people know how to get from here to there anymore because the technology is just too good at it.
Yeah, well, so if I'm using a GPS navigation system, then is it kind of taking away my autonomy, or is it helping me out? I mean, I don't know. This is like 10 different meetings, probably just to kind of demystify that. But yeah, I guess, yeah, it's hard. When I was writing my dissertation, they were telling me that, okay, it has to be unique, which is okay, all right, yeah, I got it. But then it has to be significant. Now, how do you define significant? Requires a serious demystification of the word.
Right, thank God for Claude Shannon. There you go. I'm always like, there you go. It's a surprise. You're surprising me. Yeah, there you go. It just, well, and that does have to do with this literacy thing. Question why an AI do not do critical AI literacy. And I think that's even more puzzling, right? Because like we just said, or I say it and you can contradict me, is like, well, AI does not understand the English language. Right? It really doesn't know anything. It just happens to, and I think in its best case scenario, be trained on everything. You know what I mean? Because it is a harmony seeking machine. It looks for the most suitable pattern, just like we sort of do as well. You know, it's a storytelling machine in another way, right? Because stories are not real, but they're significant because that's the only way we could ever remember anything is through a story. And stories have broken time periods, they have mistaken identities. You see what I mean? They have unclear outcomes, but they're still really good stories, and we live our lives with them because they're useful. They're essential, right? And AI can tell stories easily, right?
Yeah.
And really useful ones, at least for me. Now, I think when you look at them as being like an oracle, hey, give me the answer to problem X. Will my building fall over? I'd be like, I wouldn't go there. You know what I mean? That's not what they're for, right? You're making a mental model problem of AI, which is, at least for me. I don't know for you, because you're much deeper into it. You have to deal with people's mental models, which is, I do not want to have expertise in this area. I want AI to do it for me, and then I want to present that as my own work.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So AI write my dissertation, and then boom, I'll give it to my professor who will have AI read my dissertation and tell me if I am any good.
Well,
I
yeah.
mean, that's kind of where we're at, aren't we? I mean, why wouldn't you do that?
So let's say you have the best book on your shelf about calculus, the best book ever written, absolutely, number
Principia
one, right?
Mathematica. There you go.
Does the book really understand mathematics? Probably not. Okay,
Well,
so
it's a story. I mean, it kind of does. Okay.
yeah, but the book itself doesn't understand anything,
No,
right? So
you're
we can
right.
make the same argument. So now you have to have that additional component. Now you have to have a reader, right? And then the book plus a reader kind of maybe is the understanding, right? So does the reader have to be human? Maybe not, because then the reader can be the AI. So the book plus AI will answer all the questions that you might possibly have. So maybe the argument, hey, so that combination now truly understands the field, so it knows about calculus now. So that might be the true understanding. Or is that the book and the human brain, right, is the true creates a true understanding. So this is kind of a little bit of a fuzzy area. I'm kind of leaning towards the fact that if you have an AI system that can answer questions that are very in-depth, then it really doesn't, that's a moot point. Do you really truly understand versus can you really answer all the tough questions? So yeah, I'm not sure if I'm with you on this. I mean, but that's the same argument that we always have about, the emotions, right? I mean, are those really true emotions, or are those just very good states that the AI can recognize, right?
Well, I think you actually bring up something, maybe it's the profound end to our discussion for this week, and maybe the one for the next. But you did bring up something that I think is really interesting that I have found in my studies. So this goes like this. The Tao, it gives birth to one gives birth to two gives birth to three, and then three gives birth to everything. So this is Lao Tzu, in, I don't know, 3,000 years ago. So I think it's three. You see what I mean? Like, I think the 1 and 2 is good, but understanding should be 3, because the harmony of 3 is very important in all of nature. And 3 could be, maybe it's that understanding, maybe it's the storytelling, maybe it's the sharing, maybe it's the social proof that you need when 1 and 2 come up with something, right? Like, because you're right, we're just the one. That's all we can ever be. Two is partner or friends, but it could also be, you know, this new tool, right? Or whatever. Maybe the two for somebody is a cool table saw or something. You know what I mean? Like something augments, but then there has to be three. And then three is everything. Once you have that, you have the world, right? Because you need it. I don't know. It seems that's my philosophy degree for you right there.
Yeah, you might be correct. I mean, you might have this kind of like a philosophical intuition about the ultimate architecture of everything, right? Like it has to be three components, right? Like it has to be those at minimum, right? And two components, and maybe that's the human brain architecture, that there is actually three interrelated components that create the consciousness. Consciousness, you know, like a human eye seeing a cup of coffee. That's not enough, right? You have to have maybe something in the brain that is going to interpreting the impulses, and maybe the third thing is going to be some sort of a point of reference region in the human brain that kind of creates the understanding. Maybe you were right. So yeah, I mean,
Oh no, it's Lao Tzu, man. This is 3,000. They were smart.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
they've known this stuff for a while. They just didn't have the same tools, you know, that we do. But I don't think we're as advanced, but maybe we're advanced more on an individual level, which would be great. And if we can be advanced more as a group, that would be fantastic too, right? And we're both, I personally am still like, you know, how the hype curve was, hey, cloud computing, you know, 3D printing, you know, it's like there's always this thing that grifters get into our minds, how it's going to change everything. And really it's, I think with AI, we're here. We're just laying the foundation of what it could do. And then some, you know, it's going to be down here for a while. It going up is still puzzling. I don't think it's here. You know what I mean? It's not going to be like, that AI thing. Oh, we're so over that. I think we want it to be that way, but I don't think fundamentally it is, right? Because it has unlocked this little bit of math, right? It unlocked this very interesting thing. And I think I shared with you the whole paper that somebody did about how it literally mimics the way we think, the way you just said. It's not a coffee cup. Well, it is, because then suddenly it's a three, right? There's this new thing that came into being, but it doesn't exist. We created, you know, we created it out of nothing. You know, and that creative thing is still, to me, like, it's fascinating, and I hope we can talk about it again next week.
All right. Yeah, that was a very philosophical meeting today. Yeah, I have to say.
Somehow the engineer in you, somehow, right? I'm trying. It's good. No, it is good. But I had an engineering thing in there for you. Come on, you know, it's important. So anyway, till next week.
All right. Yeah, see you.